I didn't think building my dream home would start a war. It began on a quiet Tuesday morning when the foundation crew rolled onto my land with their trucks, cement mixers, and steel rebar. For me, it was a day I had been dreaming about for years. For Karen, my soon-to-be nightmare neighbor, it was the day she decided I had declared war on her HOA. The funny thing? I wasn't even part of her HOA. My lot sat right next to their neatly trimmed suburban community, just beyond the stone entrance sign and the ridiculous speed bumps. My property was on county land, free from their endless rules about paint colors, mailbox styles, and lawn heights. But to Karen, queen of the cul-de-sac, that didn't matter. She strutted across my property line like she owned it, oversized sunglasses perched on her face, a binder clutched to her chest like a weapon. I was standing with the foreman going over blueprints when I heard the sharp click of her sandals against the gravel. "Excuse me," she barked, her voice carrying like a siren. "You can't build this here." The foreman glanced at me, eyebrows raised. I forced a polite smile. "Morning. Can I help you?" Karen thrust the binder forward, pages filled with printed HOA documents, highlighted and tabbed like a courtroom exhibit. "This construction violates Section 4B of the HOA Code. All homes must have uniform siding, neutral paint colors, and pre-approved architectural plans. None of this," she waved toward the foundation stakes, "was submitted for approval." I almost laughed. "Ma'am, this isn't part of your HOA. My land is county property. I've got all the permits from the city right here." I tapped the rolled blueprints in my hand. For a split second, her jaw dropped. Then her face flushed red. "That's impossible. This neighborhood is governed by our rules. If you build outside of them, you're going to lower everyone's property values." I shrugged. "Sorry, but your rules don't apply to me." That's when she screamed the words that would set the tone for the next 6 months of my life. "This is illegal. You can't just build whatever you want here." At first, I thought she'd just huff and storm off. Maybe complain to her HOA board. Maybe send a nasty letter. But no, Karen wasn't just another nosy neighbor. She was a force of pure suburban chaos, fueled by Starbucks, gossip, and the desperate need to control everyone within shouting distance. That same afternoon, she blocked the cement truck with her SUV, parking diagonally across the gravel drive. My crew stood around awkwardly while she shouted into her phone, claiming she was calling the authorities. "Ma'am, you're trespassing," I said firmly. "You need to move your car," she sneered. "No. You'll thank me later when you realize I saved this neighborhood from your monstrosity. My HOA has standards." One of the workers muttered, "Lady, this ain't even your land." She whipped around, sunglasses sliding down her nose, and screeched, "Don't you talk to me like that. This entire street falls under HOA jurisdiction." It didn't, not legally. But logic wasn't part of Karen's vocabulary. Eventually, the sheriff's deputy showed up, not because of her fake HOA authorities, but because I had called about her blocking the trucks. He was professional, calm, and very clearly over her antics within 5 minutes. "Ma'am," the deputy said, "this property isn't part of the HOA. You need to move your vehicle." Karen exploded. "That's a lie. I'll take this to court. I'll have the county shut this down." The deputy raised an eyebrow, clearly unimpressed. "If you don't move the car, I'll have it towed." The look on her face was priceless. She sputtered, stomped, then finally stormed back to her SUV and screeched out of the driveway. Gravel flying. My crew chuckled, shaking their heads. But me? I felt the first pit of dread in my stomach. Because if I knew anything about people like Karen, she wasn't going to let this go. That night, I found a letter taped to the temporary construction fence. Written in thick red marker, all caps. "Stop construction or else." No signature, of course. But I didn't need one dot, it was only day one. And the war with Karen had officially begun. By the next morning, the letter was gone, not because I'd taken it down, oh no. It had disappeared sometime during the night. My guess? Karen didn't want to leave evidence. Or maybe she'd realized that writing threats in red marker was a little too obvious, even for her. Still, I wasn't about to let it slide. When the crew showed up, I warned them. She might try something again. Don't engage. If she causes problems, let me handle it. They nodded, clearly amused at the thought of a neighborhood Karen trying to shut down a full construction project. But by lunchtime, nobody was laughing because Karen came back with reinforcements. A line of SUVs rolled down the road, all slowing in front of my lot. Out stepped 3 men in polo shirts tucked into khakis, clipboards in hand, each one with a smug, official look on his face. Behind them, Karen, marching proudly like she had summoned an army. She pointed dramatically at my half-poured foundation. There, that monstrosity. Shut it down immediately. The tallest man stepped forward, clearing his throat. Sir, we're with the HOA Architectural Committee. You failed to submit your building plans for approval. This construction violates our covenant. I crossed my arms. And as I already told your friend here, this isn't part of your HOA. I'm on county land. I have permits from the city. None of your rules apply. The men exchanged glances as if they couldn't believe I dared to talk back. Karen smirked like she'd already won. The shorter man flipped a clipboard open. According to our maps, your lot is adjacent to HOA jurisdiction, which means any construction here must conform to neighborhood standards. I raised an eyebrow. Adjacent doesn't mean included. Show me the deed. Show me the plats. They shifted uncomfortably. Karen jumped in to save them. You don't understand how things work around here. We maintain community harmony. A mismatched house will destroy property values. Everyone on this street has worked hard to keep our homes beautiful, and you think you can just plop down some rogue mansion? I felt my jaw tighten. I dreamed of this house for years, worked double shifts, skipped vacations, poured every cent I had into making it happen. And this woman, who had no legal claim, thought she could bully me out of it because of harmony? Look, I said firmly, the county issued the permits. If you have a problem, take it up with them. Until then, you're trespassing. The tallest man frowned. We'll be filing an injunction. Karen's grin widened. And until then, we'll be documenting every violation. She whipped out her phone, snapping pictures of the workers, the trucks, even my personal car parked on the gravel. She narrated loudly as she filmed. Illegal construction site, multiple violations, neighbors at risk, unsafe practices. The crew looked at me nervously. One of them whispered, "Boss, is she allowed to film us like that?" "Public property," I muttered, though I hated every second of it. Ignore her. But ignoring Karen was impossible. For the next 3 hours, she and her committee of clipboard warriors stood across the street, taking notes, snapping photos, and muttering to each other like vultures waiting for a kill. When the cement truck arrived, she darted forward, waving her arms. Stop right now. This is unauthorized. You can't pour cement here." The driver leaned out the window, bewildered. "Lady, I got a job to do," she shrieked. "You'll regret this. The HOA will sue you too." The poor guy just rolled his eyes and backed up to the foundation. But I could feel the tension thickening, like storm clouds gathering. That evening, I got my first official letter. It wasn't from the county. It wasn't from the city. It was from the HOA board. The envelope was stuffed into my mailbox, addressed to me in aggressive all-caps font. Inside, a single-page letter. Notice of violation. You are hereby ordered to cease construction of your property at address redacted. Your building plans are not in compliance with HOA covenants. You are required to submit a full architectural review within 10 business days or face legal consequences. At the bottom, 5 signatures. And of course, Karen's name printed neatly as Vice President, HOA Board. I laughed out loud. They couldn't be serious. Still, I called my lawyer the next morning. After reading the letter, he chuckled. They've got nothing. You're outside their jurisdiction, but they can make your life miserable. Expect harassment. He wasn't wrong. Over the next week, Karen escalated from yelling to interfering. She called county inspectors on me 3 times each time, claiming I was illegally dumping materials, operating without permits, or endangering the neighborhood. Every inspector left shaking their head. You've got all the right paperwork. She just won't stop calling. One even muttered, honestly, we get calls about her all the time. But the breaking point came Friday evening. I'd stayed late, going over progress with the foreman. The sun was setting, the sky painted orange and pink, when we heard the crunch of tires. Karen's SUV rolled up, headlights blazing. She jumped out, waving her phone. I've recorded everything. Your trucks, your workers, your violations. Tomorrow I'm presenting it all to the HOA board. And then, she jabbed her finger at me, we're taking you to court. I took a deep breath. I was tired, sweaty, and beyond fed up. Karen, I'll say this one last time. You and your HOA have no authority here. None. This is county property, my land, my home. Stop harassing me. She leaned in, her voice dropping to a hiss. You think you can win? You have no idea who you're dealing with. We'll bury you in paperwork. We'll drag you through hearings. You'll wish you never built here. For a moment, the anger boiled in me. But then, something unexpected happened. I smiled, because if she wanted a war, I was ready to fight. I thought the worst Karen could do was yell and tape ominous notes to my fence. I was wrong. By the end of part 2, I already knew she had stamina. What I didn't realize was how far she would go to turn a construction site into her personal battleground. Part 3 is where the quiet war started to feel like a campaign. Harassment by day, sabotage by night, and a smear operation that smelled faintly of desperation. It began with deliveries. The first week was. Normal concrete showed up. Framing lumber arrived. The HVAC guys did a quick site visit. Then, one morning, our scheduled delivered load of custom windows never arrived. The trucking company called an hour later saying their driver had been threatened and refused to unload. Some lady at the intersection blocked us and started yelling about HOA rules, the dispatcher said. Driver felt unsafe, went back. We tracked the truck on GPS. It had stopped right at the end of the cul-de-sac. Karen had parked her SUV across the road, and 3 other cars' neighbors she'd rallied stood like sentries. One middle-aged man carried a clipboard and shook his head as the driver argued through the window. Another woman filmed on her phone. The driver showed me the video later. Karen, red-faced, pointing, shouting into the camera, "You're bringing illegal materials. We're calling the county." I asked the company to reschedule. The driver sighed. "We'll bring it in at dawn." Nobody wants to rock the boat in daylight. Dawn it was. We organized a small advance team, 2 workers, the foreman, and me. We rolled in before sunrise. We got the windows delivered while the cul-de-sac still slept, and for a day it felt like a minor victory. But Karen didn't accept small defeats. That night, a tarp went missing. Not an important tarp, one of the big, expensive contractor tarps that cover frames and supplies overnight. When the foreman noticed, he swore and went to check the perimeter cameras I'd installed after the first week of weirdness. The footage showed shadows at 2:14 a.m. Someone crouched over a stack of plywood. The image wasn't clear, but the gait and the jacket looked familiar. The person moved with the kind of boldness that comes from expecting no consequences. "You think it was her?" the foreman asked. "I do," I said. "And I want proof." We upgraded the cameras to ones with night vision and motion alerts. I also bought floodlights and a little generator. If Karen wanted to play surveillance state, she was about to find out she was playing against someone who would at least record the plays. Next escalation was administrative but malicious. Within days, I started getting calls from the county zoning office. They asked me to come down because someone had submitted an anonymous complaint about improper materials and unpermitted driveway alterations. I took my permit folder, a thick binder of stamped approvals, and went in. The inspector who met me was sympathetic but bureaucratic. "We get complaints like this a lot," he said, flipping through the paper trail. "Someone is trying to get you to trip a technicality. As long as your paperwork is complete and your site is compliant, we'll close it. Still, each call costs time." Each new inspection meant an extra day where work paused while the county verified things. Those pauses added up not just in lost hours, but in logistics and morale. Contractors started quoting delays. Some threatened to raise prices if the harassment continued. Meanwhile, the HOA waged a social war. Karen launched what I started calling the neighborhood whisper campaign. It worked like this. She would email neighbors with dramatic subject lines: "Urgent, save our property values, attach a badly photographed image of my foundation," and list concerns. People who barely knew me suddenly had opinions ready. A woman 3 houses down texted her book club, "Did you see the monstrosity? Not sure it'll impact resale." Another neighbor, who'd always been friendly and waved as I walked the site, stopped making eye contact. I tried to fight it with transparency. I invited neighbors to an open site day. "Come see the plans. Talk to the architect." I wrote on a flyer and taped to the construction fence. A handful came. The architect explained the materials, the energy efficiency, the landscaping plan. One elderly couple confessed they'd been worried, but after seeing the high quality and the custom details designed to blend with the local aesthetic, the woman hugged my architect and said, "We didn't know, this looks beautiful." Karen wasn't moved. If anything, the open site day made her more frantic. She ramped up the messaging to the HOA board and started scribbling notes in group chat. Threads where residents I'd never spoken to suddenly had opinions about my window placement. And then she did something I hadn't anticipated. She tried to weaponize my past. In the age of phones and screenshots, everything is a paper trail. She dug through public property records and online news clippings and found an old minor dispute I'd had years ago over a fence line with a different neighbor, resolved, paid, forgettable. She turned it into evidence of my being a problem. She printed it on glossy paper, attached it to a 2-page letterhead, and distributed it door to door as part of a package she assembled. Photos, complaints, purported valuations. It landed on my front porch like a grenade. I called my lawyer. He read the packet and then said exactly what I expected. It's defamatory. It's inflammatory. It's purposeful misrepresentation. We can send a cease and desist and threaten libel actions. But be prepared. This will escalate. Do it, I said. Send it. The cease and desist went out in a crisp email. For a day, Karen went quiet too quiet. Then the next morning, the HOA posted a notice on the community board announcing an emergency meeting about encroachments and unpermitted construction. The timing was perfect. They scheduled it for the same night my contractor could not attend. The idea seemed obvious: create an atmosphere of community outrage while I couldn't defend myself in person. That night, the community center filled. Chairs squeaked. Karen stood at the lectern like a victorious general. One after another, a few neighbors stepped up at the microphone and read from the packet, some out of genuine concern. others echoing talking points she'd trained them on. It felt like being tried in a place where public sentiment mattered more than the law. I'd gone because I knew silence would be assumed as guilt. I waited until the Q&A and then I stepped up. "You're talking about things that aren't true," I said, my voice steady though my heart thudded. "I have permits from the county. I've followed every regulation. I'm building something respectful to the neighborhood. But if you want to talk about what's true, let's look at facts, not fear." A woman in the back stood up. "But think about resale values." "Resale values?" I repeated. "I'm increasing property value. This is a custom-built modern home, energy efficient, designed by a local architect who studied the neighborhood guidelines. Let's look at the facts." Two sides formed in the room, a handful of rational neighbors who asked sensible questions, and a louder, nervous group who hung on Karen's every word. When it ended, the HOA president, who'd remained annoyingly neutral, announced they'd file for a temporary injunction to halt construction pending legal review. That night, I fell asleep at my desk, staring at the stack of permits and the video footage from the cameras. I felt tired and strangely determined. Karen had tried intimidation, obstruction, and rumor. She had tried to make the county board with me by filing endless small complaints. But she hadn't broken me. What she had done, though, was produced an escalation ladder. Every tactic she used taught me how far she'd go next. If she could organize neighbors, block trucks, and smear my reputation, the next step could be real costly legal motions. I doubled down on documentation. I printed everything, time-stamped every email, cataloged every phone call, and labeled footage with dates. My lawyer told me to do the same. "Show the pattern," he said. Patterns beat accusations. At 2 a.m., an email landed in my inbox from the HOA attorney, a notice of their intent to file for a temporary restraining order to stop work immediately. Attached were pages of their claims' alleged violations, neighborhood standards, some cherry-picked, and the packet Karen had assembled. I read through it once, then twice. The document was a mosaic of truth and embellishment, a smear masked as civility. I set my coffee down and typed one sentence into a reply to my lawyer. "Let's file for a declaratory judgment and ask for sanctions for frivolous filings." He replied within 10 minutes. "Good. Expect delays, but we'll put pressure back." And that, more than anything, is where Part 3 ends on the cusp of legal fire. Karen's tactics had become surgical. Delay, ostracize, litigate. My response was becoming methodical. Document, defend, and push back. The foundation was poured. The frames were up, and the cameras were rolling. But now, it wasn't just about building walls and roofs. It was about constructing a legal and narrative fortress strong enough to withstand the barrage. I'd built my house on paper 100 times before sketched, drafted, designed, and redrawn. But I'd never imagined that the first walls I'd face wouldn't be drywall, but legal walls. The HOA had filed for a temporary restraining order, in simple terms. They wanted a judge to freeze construction until compliance issues could be resolved. It wasn't enough for them to yell at trucks or call inspectors. Now Karen and her HOA board wanted a legal weapon to force me to stop. And here's the thing about TROs. They're easy to request, sometimes granted quickly, and they can grind a project to a halt. The official envelope arrived on a Tuesday, hand-delivered by a process server who smirked like he'd seen this dance before. "You've been served," he said, sliding the stack of papers into my hand. Karen, of course, stood across the street with her phone out, recording the moment like she'd just won the Super Bowl. I flipped through the documents. 20 pages of allegations, community impact statements, and cherry-picked clauses from HOA, bylaws that didn't even apply to my land. They accused me of non-conforming architecture, encroaching on HOA easements, failure to obtain HOA approval, and my personal favorite, creating a nuisance detrimental to neighborhood harmony. I almost laughed. Except for the fact that if the judge granted it, I'd be bleeding thousands of dollars every week in delays. The county courthouse smelled like old wood and coffee. My lawyer, a calm bulldog of a man named Reynolds, assured me we were fine. They'll try to overwhelm with paperwork, he said. But the judge will ask one question: jurisdiction. Does the HOA have authority over your land? Answer: no. Karen arrived with the HOA board like it was prom night. Matching binders, crisp polo shirts, fake confidence. She wore a red blazer that screamed power and strutted down the aisle with her nose tilted skyward. I swear. She winked at me. The hearing was short. The HOA attorney argued passionately about neighborhood integrity and protecting property values. He cited bylaws, waved photos of my half-framed house, and even brought up traffic concerns, claiming construction trucks were dangerous to children riding bikes. When Reynolds stood, he didn't bother with theatrics. He slid a single-page county plat map onto the judge's desk. Highlighted in yellow, my lot. Outside the HOA boundary. Your Honor, the HOA has no jurisdiction here. My client has county permits, inspections passed, and every right to build. This TRO is not only frivolous, it's harassment. The judge leaned back, unimpressed. Counselor, the HOA bylaws don't extend beyond the subdivision boundary. This property isn't subject to them. The HOA attorney squirmed. But the impact, the judge raised a hand. Impact isn't authority. Request for TRO is denied. Bang. Just like that. Karen gasped audibly. Her mouth opened like she'd swallowed a lemon whole. As we left, Karen cornered me in the hallway, her eyes blazing. You think you've won? This isn't over. We'll bury you in appeals. You'll run out of money before that house is finished. I didn't respond. I just walked past. Because something happened inside that courtroom I hadn't expected. Someone else noticed her. A man in a crisp gray suit, who'd been sitting in the gallery, approached me outside. Excuse me, you're building on Maple Ridge, right? Yes, I said cautiously. I'm with the county planning office, he said, flashing an ID. We've had multiple calls about your project. Thought I should see it firsthand. I braced for bad news. But instead, he smiled faintly. I've seen this HOA before. They overstep. Frankly, you've handled it well. Keep your documentation tight. And if they keep filing false complaints, let me know. There are consequences for abuse of county resources. It was the first time in weeks I felt the ground tilt slightly in my favor. By that evening, the HOA Facebook group was on fire. Screenshots flooded my phone, neighbors messaging me, some supportive, others hostile. Karen had already rewritten the court hearing as her victory. Her post read, while the TRO was denied for now, the judge acknowledged the dangers this construction poses. We're preparing further legal action. Stay strong, neighbors, we will protect our community. The comments split down the middle. Half were cheerleaders. The other half started asking dangerous questions. Wait, do they actually have jurisdiction? Why are we paying HOA dues for lawsuits that don't affect us? This seems personal, Karen. That last one stuck. Because for the first time, cracks appeared in her support. 2 days later, as I checked the site, a neighbor I hadn't met before walked over. Middle-aged, baseball cap, paint stains on his hands. You're the guy building the new place? He asked. Yeah, that's me. He smirked. Karen hates me too. She tried to find me last year for having the wrong color garden hose. I fought her. Won. Been on her blacklist ever since. He extended his hand. Name's Miller. If you ever need a witness for how crazy she is, I'm your guy." I shook his hand, a weight lifting off my shoulders. For the first time, I wasn't fighting alone. That night, as I stood in the skeletal frame of my dream home, the wood beams creaking under the cool wind, I realized this wasn't just a fight about walls and windows. It was about control, freedom, and whether one overzealous neighbor could dictate the lives of everyone around. Her Karen thought the courtroom would crush me. But now I had proof she could lose. And worse for her, she was losing support. The war was far from over. But for the first time, I wasn't just surviving it. I was starting to wind up by now. My house was more than just lumber and nails, it was a target. Karen had lost in court, lost face online, and was losing the loyalty of her neighbors. And that's when people like her stopped playing by the rules. It started. SMALL, a pallet of concrete bags went missing from the site. Then, a dumpster showed up in my driveway rented in my name and filled overnight with someone else's trash. The crew joked about phantom dumpers. Didn't, because I knew exactly who was behind it, but I didn't have proof. Not yet. It was just past midnight, a Friday. I'd stopped by the site to grab some tools before the weekend. The moon hung low, pale against the skeletal outline of my house. That's when I heard it, metal scraping against metal. I froze. Inside the half-framed garage, a shadow moved. A figure hunched near the generator, yanking wires loose. My heart pounded. I flicked on my phone's flashlight. "Hey!" I shouted. The figure snapped upright. And there she was, Karen, red hoodie pulled tight, eyes wild in the glare. For a split second, neither of us moved. Then she hissed, "You don't belong here. This house doesn't belong here." And she bolted. She didn't realize two things. My crew had set up a motion-activated trail camera earlier that week because of the missing supplies. She'd parked her Lexus right at the curb. The camera caught her face in perfect clarity. And her plates? Even clearer. By morning, I had a neat little package. Time-stamped photos, damaged equipment, and an eyewitness statement. Mine. I took everything straight to the sheriff's office. The same deputy who'd been at the HOA fiasco shook his head when he saw the photos. "She really did this herself?" he asked. "Middle of the night," I said. "Tried to sabotage my generator," he sighed. "We've had complaints about her before." This changes things. That afternoon, 2 patrol cars rolled up the cul-de-sac. Neighbors peeked through curtains as deputies walked Karen out of her house, not in cuffs, but with the kind of firm grip that made it clear this wasn't optional. Karen wasn't arrested that day, but she was officially cited for trespassing and vandalism. And worse for her, it became public record. The HOA Facebook page exploded. Supporters vanished overnight. Posts ranged from, "I knew she was crazy, but this? Wait, she's the one breaking the law? Why are we still letting her lead this board?" By the end of the week, the HOA president announced a special emergency meeting to discuss leadership. I didn't attend. I didn't need to, because for once, Karen's obsession had finally backfired. That weekend, I stood again in the unfinished house. The sun poured through the beams. The place still smelled of sawdust and new beginnings. For the first time, I felt something that had been missing for months. Peace. Karen wasn't done, not by a long shot. But she'd crossed a line. And every time she did, she made my case stronger. My dream home wasn't just surviving anymore. It was winning. By the time Monday rolled around, the neighborhood felt different, quieter. Not in the peaceful way, but in that loaded, electric way where everyone knew a storm was coming. HOA had called a special emergency meeting, and everyone knew why. I didn't get an official invite. After all, I wasn't in the HOA, but that didn't stop 3 of my new friends from knocking on my trailer door the evening before. "You gotta be there," said Jim. The guy who'd lent me his ladder months ago. We're tired of her, and it's time she answers for this. Won't I get kicked out if I show up? I asked. His wife chuckled. Half the neighborhood wants you there. Don't worry, you'll be fine. And so, the next night, I walked into the community clubhouse, the place that had once been Karen's throne room. The room was packed. Folding chairs scraped against the floor. People whispered, eyes darting toward the front where the HOA board sat stiffly behind a long table. And in the center, like a queen clinging to her crown, sat Karen, red blouse, stiff posture. Binder at her side like always. The president, a tired-looking man named Roger, tapped the microphone. All right, let's call this meeting to order. We're here tonight to address recent incidents involving board leadership. Karen shot up before he could continue. Excuse me? Incidents? She slapped her binder on the table. This is nothing more than a smear campaign against me for protecting our community. Groans rippled through the room. One by one, residents stood. I've lived here 10 years, said a woman near the back. I've seen every HOA board come and go. But I've never seen a board member trespass and vandalize someone's property. That's criminal. Karen's face turned scarlet. Lies. Those photos were doctored. He set me up. She jabbed a finger at me. Every head in the room turned my way. I stood slowly, feeling my heart pound, and spoke evenly. Those photos came from a trail camera. You parked your car right in front of it, Karen. I didn't need to set you up. You did it yourself. A wave of murmurs. People nodded. Some even clapped. Karen's voice cracked. You don't even belong here. You're not one of us. And that was her mistake, because in that moment I saw it, the shift. Neighbors who'd been sitting on the fence, quietly tolerating her tantrums, suddenly looked disgusted. You know what, Karen? Jim's wife spoke up. Maybe he isn't in the HOA. Maybe that's the problem. Because he's the only one here who's been honest with us this whole time. Another neighbor chimed in. She's embarrassed this community. People at work are laughing at us because of that Facebook thread. Do you all realize we're a joke now? Karen slammed her binder shut, trembling with rage. I've given this HOA everything. I've dedicated my weekends, my evenings, my blood, sweat, and tears, and lawsuits, someone cut in, and trespassing charges, another. Added. The room erupted in low laughter. Roger raised his hands. Enough, we're wasting time. The board has prepared a motion for removal from office due to misconduct and loss of confidence. We'll put it to a vote, Karen gasped. You can't do this to me. I am this HO. But the ballots were already being passed around. Small slips of paper. Pens scratching quietly. When they were collected, Roger counted them slowly. The tension was so thick you could feel it pressing down on the room. By a vote of 28-3, Roger paused, looking almost relieved. Karen is officially removed from the HOA board effective immediately. The room broke into applause. Some people stood. A couple even cheered. Karen, meanwhile, stood frozen. Binder clutched to her chest like a life raft. Her face pale. Her mouth opening and closing like she couldn't find words. Finally, she hissed. This isn't over. None of you understand what you've done. And then, for the first time since I'd met her, Karen didn't scream. She didn't threaten. She just left. Neighbors gathered around me afterward, shaking my hand, thanking me. You didn't just build a house, one guy said with a grin. You helped build us a little backbone too. For the first time since breaking ground, I felt like I actually belong, not just on my lot, but in the neighborhood. Karen wasn't gone. I knew that much. People like her never really go away. But she wasn't in power anymore. And as I walked back across the street, the half-built frame of my dream home glowing softly under the streetlights, I realized something. This house wasn't just surviving Karen. It was outlasting her. When Karen walked out of that meeting, binder clutched like a shield, I thought I'd seen the last of her power. Turns out, I was only half right. She no longer had an HOA title. No board, no votes, no rules to weaponize. But what she did have was worse: free time, a bruised ego, and an endless thirst for payback. For about a week, things seemed almost normal. My crew worked without interruption. Neighbors waved when they passed. The noise of hammers and saws blended into the suburban hum, but beneath it all, there was a chill. At the grocery store, I caught two women staring, whispering before quickly walking away. My mailbox started filling with anonymous notes, each nastier than the last. Sell now before it's too late. Your house will never belong here. Karen was right. And, strangest of all, my trash cans began mysteriously tipping over at night. Coincidence? Not with Karen around. One evening, while picking up supplies at Home Depot, I ran into Jim. He leaned against his truck, looking uneasy. You heard the rumors, right? He asked. What rumors? She's telling people your permits are fake, that you bribed the inspector. Says the county's about to shut you down. I laughed, but it wasn't funny. That's insane. I've got every permit stamped and signed. Jim nodded. Doesn't matter. She's planting doubt. Some folks believe her. That was Karen's new weapon, gossip. She couldn't control me legally anymore, so she was trying to poison me socially. The first real attack came on a Saturday. I woke up to find my partially built siding splattered with raw eggs. The smell was already sour in the morning heat. My crew cursed under their breath, grabbing buckets and hoses. One guy muttered, "High school prank," but I knew better. Karen wasn't above using neighborhood kids as pawns. I checked the trail camera again. This time, the footage showed three teens, hoodies pulled low, sprinting across my lawn, hurling eggs, then vanishing into the dark, but parked at the curb, headlights dimmed. Alexis. I brought the footage to the sheriff's office again. The deputy shook his head, clearly tired of hearing the same name. Look, we can't prove she told those kids to do it, he said, but we'll have a word with her. And sure enough, 2 days later, I saw the patrol car parked outside her driveway. The deputies weren't inside long. When they left, Karen stood on her porch, arms crossed, glare fixed straight at my house like a laser beam. She was careful now. Careful not to be caught directly. But that look told me everything. This wasn't over. Weeks passed, and the attacks got pettier, but more frequent. Someone ordered $300 worth of pizzas to my address. Nails scattered. Across my driveway in the middle of the night. My internet cable was mysteriously cut twice. Neighbors sympathized, but many stayed silent, afraid of becoming Karen's next target. A few even began avoiding me, not wanting to be dragged into the feud. That was her plan. Isolate me. Make me feel like the outsider she always claimed I was. One night, after cleaning up yet another mess, a bag of rotting garbage tossed over my fence, I sat on the tailgate of my truck, fists clenched, asking myself the question I'd been avoiding. Was she winning? Because it wasn't about the eggs or the nails or even the rumors. It was about breaking me, making me miserable enough to give up on the house entirely. And I'll admit, there was a moment. I almost considered it, but then I looked at the frame of my home, now standing tall against the night sky, roof almost complete, windows ready to go in, and I thought, not a chance. If Karen wanted war, I was done playing defense. For weeks, Karen's petty sabotage and gossip campaign ate at me. Broken cables. Trash tossed over the fence. Rumors whispered at the grocery store, but one night, sitting on the tailgate of my truck, staring at the skeletal frame of my almost finished house, I realized something. She wanted me to quit. To pack up, sell the lot, and disappear. That's when it hit me. If Karen was playing dirty, I didn't need to match her with dirt. I needed to fight smarter. First, I made sure my defenses were airtight. I upgraded my cameras, 6 new motion-activated floodlights, 2 doorbell cams, and a pair of trail cams hidden in the landscaping. The next time she or her little helpers stepped foot on my land, I'd have crystal clear footage from every angle. I even put up a sign at the edge of my lot. "Smile, you're on camera." Karen saw it the next morning during her jog. She slowed, read it, and glared at me from across the property line. I gave her the friendliest wave I could manage. Karen thrived on reputation, on control. So I decided to flip that. I compiled everything. The vandalism report. Photos of her blocking the cement truck. Trail cam footage of her at the generator, screenshots of the threats and gossip posts. Then I put it all in one neat folder, and I sent it not just to the sheriff's office, but also to the HOA board, the county inspector, and yes, the neighborhood Facebook group. Within an hour, my phone buzzed nonstop. Neighbors commenting things like, "Wait, she actually did this? Unbelievable. She owes him an apology, not harassment." For once, Karen wasn't the loudest voice in the room. I wasn't bluffing anymore. I scheduled a meeting with a local attorney who specialized in property disputes. When I laid out the evidence, he shook his head and said, "She's dug herself a hole." Within a week, Karen was served with a formal cease and desist letter. Trespass again, sabotage again, and she'd be facing a civil lawsuit for damages. I made sure the process server handed it to her while she was pruning roses in her front yard. Neighbors watched from their porches as Karen stood frozen, paper in hand, jaw clenched tight enough to crack a tooth. The strangest thing happened after that. Neighbors who'd been silent started talking. Jim swung by with a cooler of sodas for the crew. A woman down the street brought cookies for my workers. Even the kids riding bikes waved as they zipped past. It was subtle, but it was real. People were choosing sides. And they weren't choosing Karen. Of course, she didn't stay quiet. She marched across the street one evening, legal letter in hand, and screamed from the curb, "You think you can scare me? I don't scare. You'll regret this. You'll regret all of this." But this time, no one came to her defense. Curtains twitched. Porch lights flicked on. And for once, Karen was screaming into silence. I didn't feel fear anymore. Not dread. Not even anger. I felt resolve. Karen had spent months trying to isolate me. But now, she was the one standing alone. And as I looked at my nearly completed dream home, glowing under the floodlights, I knew something important. This wasn't just about surviving her anymore. It was about beating her at her own game. By late summer, my house was nearly complete. The roof shingles were down, windows installed, drywall going up. You could finally walk inside and see real rooms taking shape. Every nail hammered in was another reminder to Karen that she'd failed to stop me. And she hated it. Neighbors said they saw her pacing her driveway at night, phone in hand, ranting to whoever would listen. One guy swore he overheard her shouting, "I'll shut it down myself if I have to." I should have taken that more seriously, because 2 nights later, she tried. It was 2:13 a.m. when my phone buzzed. Motion alert. Camera by the garage. I tapped the screen gradually, then froze. A figure crouched near a pile of lumber, flicking a lighter. My blood turned to ice. I bolted upright, heart racing, and called 911 before my brain even caught up. "There's someone trying to set fire to my construction site," I hissed. "I've got live footage. Send units now." Within minutes, sirens wailed in the distance. The figure hoodie pulled up scattered, sprinting into the shadows. But not before the floodlight caught her face. Karen. Red and blue lights lit up the street as deputies swarmed the site. Neighbors spilled out onto porches in pajamas and robes, murmuring in shock. A deputy reviewed my camera feed, whistled low. She really thought she could get away with this. Another found a half-empty gas can tossed near the fence. Evidence bagged. Photos snapped Dot and Karen. Deputies pulled her out of her Lexus, parked crook down the street. She screamed, sobbed, denied everything, but the footage was undeniable. "This is harassment," she shrieked as they led her to the cruiser. "He doesn't belong here. None of this belongs here." Her voice cracked, breaking into wild sobs. The neighborhood stood watching, silent. For the first time since I'd met her, Karen didn't look powerful. She looked broken. The deputies didn't just warn her this time. They arrested her charged with attempted arson, trespassing, and destruction of property. I watched the taillights of the cruiser fade into the night. My knees felt weak, but not from fear. From relief. It was over. The neighborhood's queen had finally toppled herself. The next morning, Jim knocked on my door. "Heard the news," he said with a grin. "Guess you won the war, huh?" I laughed, but it came out shaky. "Didn't feel like winning for a while." He clapped me on the shoulder. "Well, you outlasted her. That's more than most could have done." Neighbors who'd once kept their distance stopped by to offer support. Some apologized for staying silent. Others offered to help clean up the mess. Karen's house sat dark, blinds drawn. The HOA posted an official statement. "We do not condone the actions of former board members. Our community stands with the victim." For the first time, they called me the victim. That evening, I walked through the house alone. Sunlight filtered through new windows, painting golden stripes across the unfinished floors. It smelled like fresh lumber and drywall dust, not smoke. Not ruined. My dream home had survived everything Curran threw at it, and so had I. The dust finally settled. Months of conflict, harassment, sabotage, and legal battles had come to an end. Karen was facing the consequences of her actions, arrested, cited, and removed from power. The neighborhood slowly returned to normal. Neighbors who had been silent now openly supportive, and my house? It was complete. Walking through the finished rooms, sunlight streaming through the windows, I finally felt the peace I had fought so hard for. Every nail, every beam, every late-night cleanup had been worth it. This wasn't just a house, it was a statement. A declaration that one determined homeowner could stand up to overreach, intimidation, and obsession. I looked out the window at the quiet cul-de-sac. No more shouting. No more threats. No more vandalism. Just my home and the knowledge that I had defended it, legally and morally, every step of the way. It wasn't easy. It wasn't fair. But it was justice. And now, every time someone asks how I survived the infamous HOA Case, I tell them the same thing. Document everything, know your rights, and never back down from harassment. If you love hearing crazy HOA stories like this one, real conflicts, over-the-top neighbors, and battles over property rights, then you can't miss what's coming next. Subscribe to listen. HOA stories and hit the notification bell. Every week, we bring you the wildest, most shocking HOA encounters straight from the neighborhoods you think you know. But don't just hear the stories, listen to them.